this is Carrie, Christ-centered counselor and life coach with Promise Coaching. If you're new to this channel, please hit subscribe. You'll get lots of excellent content here on narcissistic abuse and other topics that I cover. Today, I want to talk about some of the lasting effects of narcissistic abuse, whether you're still in a relationship like this or post the relationship. And one of the ones I want to focus on in particular is the lasting effects of the words that these people speak over you and into your life. The things that narcissistic abusers say to their victims to deteriorate their self-esteem, to break down their confidence, to break down their identity, to cause them to lose themselves in the relationship are life-altering. And this can last for years and years for many survivors of narcissistic abuse as they're trying to heal and as they're moving on through life, listening to the voice of the narcissistic abuser in their head over and over again. It is truly one of the most heartbreaking things that I witness in survivors of narcissistic abuse, believing things about themselves that are just not true because of the things that the narcissistic abuser had told them about themselves. So one thing I want to address first is how these narcissistic abusers operate in the lives of their victims. And for one, we need to understand that narcissists are always projecting. They're always projecting their own issues, their own insecurities, and their own dysfunctions and things that they're guilty of onto someone else. And the closest person that they're going to do this to is their significant partner, the person they're in an intimate relationship with. That person bears the brunt of all of the narcissistic abuser's abuse. So you will get accused of things that are simply not true, and in most cases, accused of things that the narcissist is guilty of, whether it's not living up to their own expectations and standards of themselves, or engaging in behavior that is completely unacceptable in a relationship. And that could look like infidelity, that could look like addiction problems, that can look like verbally, emotionally, or physically abusing you or the children. This can look like many different things, but these are projections that they place onto you, and they will try and wrap you up in their own abusive cycle. They will try to bait you into behaving like them. And this is something that a lot of victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse struggle with and feel a lot of shame over. And I want to encourage you to release that shame, because it's not you. And I'm sure you've noticed, if you have been in a relationship like this for any length of time, that you are looking at yourself going, I don't know who I am anymore. This isn't me. I'm behaving in ways that are not true to my character. And that is not because of you. It's because of the way that you are being treated and chronically abused by the narcissist. So as much as we should take responsibility for our own behavior and our own actions, we also need to hold the abuser accountable for their influence, for the way that they are behaving and treating us in relationship, and how it's affecting us in our own behaviors. So much of that you are not responsible for, and that's important to address. Because once you can separate yourself from that and understand that these things, these issues, these behavioral dysfunctions are not a part of you, that this is a part of the narcissistic abuse, that the narcissist tries to bait you and keep you in this cyclic pattern with them. And it makes it easier for them to point the finger back at you and say, see, I told you you were crazy, when you in fact accuse them of doing something like cheating or stealing or lying or doing something that they shouldn't be doing in relationship with you, or just in general as a moral person should not be doing. So when they are doing these immoral things, these unacceptable, inappropriate things, and you point them out, now he's going to turn it around on you and say you're crazy. Or if he's gaslighting you, following you around the house, harassing you nonstop, texting you all hours of the night, belittling you to no end, criticizing you chronically, you reach a point where you just can't take anymore. And you snap. You break down, whether you break down emotionally and you're crying, or you become so enraged by this chronic abuse that you throw things or break something. Those are normal, healthy reactions to trauma. These are things that should not be suppressed. These are things that you should not be shamed for or blame shifted for. And here he is telling you, see, I've always told you that you're mentally or emotionally unstable. That's how these abusers work. So I want to encourage you to understand that this is a lie from the enemy. This is a lie that he is speaking over you and he actually encourages and provokes this to make this true about you. He knows what he's doing. He wants to break you down. He wants to bring you down to his level as much as he possibly can. And in his mind, those are what all of those attempts are about. And that's what he's trying to do. So that way he can point the finger back at you and deflect and not have to take accountability or responsibility for himself and his own behavior. So as we move through or out of these relationships, what happens is we carry these negative comments, we carry these lies with us about our self-worth, about our character, about our integrity, about who we are as human beings. And it prevents us from living in our whole identity, our whole true identity in Christ. After getting out of my abusive marriage, it took me months to realize all of the things that he was accusing me of that had nothing to do with me. These were all him. These were all things that he was doing. He was dividing our family. He was trying to divide my children and I. He was trying to divide his children and I, his family and I. There was nothing but division from him from all angles. There was no protection from him against any of his narcissistic family members, one in particular, because this is where they come from. In most cases, narcissistic abusers come from a family system of narcissism. And more oftentimes than not, narcissists will not protect you from these types of people. And they're not going to, because look at the way they're treating you. They treat you horrible. So if they're treating you horribly and emotionally, verbally, physically abusing you, They're certainly not going to protect you from anyone else that's doing that to you either. And especially if it's someone like their mother. And I see this over and over again in narcissistic relationships with abusive men and their mothers. I don't know what it is about that, but it's a really common thing for a narcissistic abuser to have a very narcissistic or highly enabling narcissistic mother. So please, please understand, this is not about you. These are their issues. And as I learned over time that these were all of his issues, all of these wild accusations and lies he would just spew out at me about who I am as a person, I was just like, is this me? Like, is this really who I am? Is what he's saying true about me? And anytime I went over it with my counselor, anytime I went over it with a close friend, mentor, family member, even my own children would point things out to me and say, you remember when he would say this or say that to you? He was actually the one doing those things. My own teenage children were recognizing this. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. So, how do we get out of replaying these negative words from the narcissist in our heads? How do we break free of that? Because we can get out of the relationship. We can move on from the relationship. But in a lot of cases, we're still living in it in our minds. And I had this epiphany, like asking myself, what constitutes me thinking like this about myself? Do I not owe it to myself and owe it to my family to live in my true identity? To get to the place of doing that, these are the steps that I have to take. And part of those steps are getting therapy. You really want to find a good counselor that can help you identify and sift through some of the cognitive dysfunctions that you're having from the relationship. False beliefs about yourself, false beliefs about the relationship and what you had with that person that really never existed. These are important dynamics that we have to address and face in order to truly begin healing. Another thing that you can do, and what is really important, is for you to get involved in a support group, to share some of these experiences with other women who've gone through something similar, to be able to relate to and connect with other victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse, so that you can be in a community of others who understand where you're at and can support you in that space. And you want to surround yourself with healthy people. And this means setting boundaries for yourself so that you're able to have the space that you need to make healthy choices for you. And this is going to take time. This was the one thing for me, learning how to set healthy and appropriate boundaries, and then also how to implement appropriate, healthy consequences if those boundaries are not respected. And then I also want you to do an activity. And this activity involves writing some of these things out, some of these remarks, these comments, these words that are ruminating in your mind from the narcissist. And I want you to write them down. And this was so helpful for me because you're going to write them down and then you're going to think about what supports that statement. And I really want you to think hard about this, because this is the thing. When I wrote these things down and I started thinking about what actually supported those statements, there was like little to no evidence of any kind to support the lies or the statements that this person had made about me, my character, who I was. And more often than not, I would go, oh my gosh, this statement is him. These words, these accusations, this was what he did. And you'll find there's a list of supporting evidence to prove that. And then after you write that down, and after you look at what truly supports these statements, and how in fact, in more cases than not, out of all of these horrible belittling comments that he made to you, that they relate to his character and who he is and his behavior and what he had been doing in the relationship, then I want you to write down the opposite of that. I want you to write down, for instance, if he said, you're not a good mom, or yeah, you're an average mom, you're not a great mom, you're just a good mom. Whatever belittling statement he made like that, I want you to write down the opposite. I want you to list all of the ways that you are an amazing mother, that you are a great mom. And I want you to look at those and validate yourself in those areas of truth, because that is what we want to do. We want to cancel out the lies spoken over us and into our minds from the narcissistic abuser. We want to cancel those things out. We want to cut off the rumination of this unhealthy toxicity from the narcissistic abuser that we are still living with day in and day out, and shaming ourselves and guilting ourselves for. We have to break free of that so that we can truly heal into a new beginning, into a new life, free, truly free from the narcissist, truly free from oppression, from abuse. I hope this video helps. And if there's anything that you would like to share that you've experienced about the voices and the words that you still hear in your mind from a narcissistic abuser or abusers from your past, please share. I would love to hear from you. And if you like this video, please hit like, subscribe to this channel, and take care.